presentation, and then we will take some questions.
Yeah. So I'll just talk about what are the important ocular investigations that we do in diabetic retinopathy. So the important investigations that one can see is that fundus photography. That is the most cost effective way one can do the diabetic retinopathy screening. And the investigations where we an ophthalmologist would go further is a fundus fluorescein angiography, ultra wide field, and OCT angiography, which is a non-invasive way of getting the information what FFA can provide. OCT and OCT angiography and ultrasound B scan. So these are the fundus photography to OCT angiography are mainly, these are the investigations that we use when the patients present with clear media. That is, there is no cataract and we can really image the retina well. However, sometimes the patient can present with a media which is hazy, then we can have to go for ultrasound B scan. So when we look at fundus photography, it is useful for the diagnosis, screening, documentation, pre-op considerations, and also as a follow-up tool. So the fundus photography is a gold standard in a way to diagnose, screen, document, and monitor diabetic retinopathy progression. Then when it comes to angiography, we need to understand that the fluorescein angiography is can be used whenever you have a media opacity to know any proliferative diabetic retinopathy, or when you are having an asymmetric diabetic retinopathy, to rule out whether there is any vascular events like ocular ischemic syndrome, or sometimes the patient vision is not correlating, and when you're suspecting unexplained visual loss, and when you're suspecting any macular ischemia, and also sometimes there can be an associated choroidal other pathology due to AMD, which can be CNVM. However, FFA is never used for screening for diabetic retinopathy because it is an invasive modality. So fundus photography is the most important screening modality. So for example, in this patient with a cataract haze, the FFA can help us to detect underlying new vessels which will leak profusely. And sometimes choroidal neovascular membrane can occur as a coincidentally, for example, when we have a macular edema and we have treated, and when there is an intense laser burns, and sometimes a CNVM can occur. So a diabetic retinopathy, one important tip is that you can see dot hemorrhages, blot hemorrhages, but if you the subretinal hemorrhage is not an usual feature in diabetic retinopathy. When there is hemorrhage occurring behind the retina, that means there could be an associated CNVM. That's how one could suspect a CNVM where FFA can play a role. A gold standard investigation FFA role is in asteroid hyalosis, where because FFA will have both exciter and barrier filters, and the asteroid hyalosis is a condition where there are a lot of calcium soaps, and which will hinder the visualization of underlying retinal structures. Whereas when you do an angiography in these patients, we can grade easily because the all these reflectance from these particles can be actually blocked by the barrier filter, allowing the visualization. So one of the important investigations where we do an FFA to grade the diabetic retinopathy is in asteroid hyalosis. And unexplained visual loss. So this is a patient who came with diabetic retinopathy changes, and you can see some hard exudates are there and some hemorrhages are there. And here, this is the central part which is important, which we call foveal avascular zone. And when we do an angiogram, but the patient was having only CF 1 meter, and when we do an angiogram, we clearly see that the complete macular ischemia is there. That means this zone is wiped off. But along with that, we could also detect what we could not see, the subtle neovascularization could be easily picked up by an FFA in terms of the increased leakage. So that's how FFA can be useful. OCT is a very popular and important investigation in a diabetic retinopathy. It is something like a histological section, or it will cause a histological biopsy of the retinal layers, what we discussed about the 10 layers. And as the name says, optical coherence tomography, it is just because of the light wave coherently, and we are able to slice the retinal structures. It is again extremely useful in diagnosis and documenting of the macular edema, the central part, whether the changes are there, the thickening is there. It is again, because of the non-invasive nature, it is the most useful. And it can also help us when we do any laser treatment or an injections as a monitoring of response Also OCT is again very, very useful. OCT is also extremely useful. For example, a diabetic macular edema which is not responding to the injections or anything, and when there is any tractional element due to vitreous interface, tractional edema, or when we think that this is an indication for surgery, again OCT can play a very role in documenting that traction. OCT's most important role that has been envisaged recently is also as a prognosis, that because the biomarkers, that the retinal layers which are there, the important layers, because of the spectral domain OCT, we can even see the photoreceptor layer, which are the important layers responsible for the sight. So the OCT can tell us if these structures are disrupted, and also whether the inner layers are disrupted. So this is very important, because a patient who is having intact photoreceptors, and when you have given injections, there is a likely chance that the patient vision will improve. Whereas, for example, in this patient, the pre-injection also the vision is 21-25, after injection also in 25, OCT might be doing well, but because of the layers disruption, it may not help the patient very well. So that's how OCT can help as a prognostic factor. Another important recent investigation is OCT angiography, which without dye, we will be able to section the layers and get the same information as what an angiography can provide us. And in this, the area of interest, the diabetic retinopathy, where OCT angio can be useful, because of the foveal avascular zone delineation, very clearly it will dominate. And this is all without injection of any dye. We are getting the best quality pictures as the which kind of sections can be done. That is OCT ACTA. And similarly, playing a very important role, just based on octa macular scans, one can just see and classify whether is, because the foveal avascular zone, normal foveal avascular zone should be intact and margins should be very clear, but based on the octa, one can classify diabetic retinopathy severity. When there is a lot of capillary dropout and lot of ischemia, one can even classify diabetic retinopathy based on the octa FAZ features. And because there is no dye leakage in octa, the extent of the ischemia, macular ischemia, also can be delineated very well. And similarly, octa also can classify the, not only the determine the extent, and also the new vessels can be seen very well. So this is all non-invasive. So for example, in a clinic, a patient comes after, because a non-invasive investigation, we are getting the same information as an angiography. It can determine the extent and depth of the new vessels. This is a pregnant lady with a silent neovascularization, like a wispy neovascular NVD. Another eye was having periretinal hemorrhage. Octa can actually help us to determine the new vessels very clearly. And it can also helpful as a follow-up tool. For example, you have given treatment in the form of injections and lasers, then one can see that the disappearance of new vessels also can be demonstrated very clearly. And I just discussed about asteroid hyalosis and use of FFA. Here, octa also can play a role in determining the lesions by whether the new vessels. However, we need to understand octa has a limitation, or OCT has a limitation. It will only be the extent of the area, whereas FFA gives you a more bigger composite picture, whereas octa will, wherever the scan goes, that much area only it can actually image and visualize. And this is a case of an asteroid hyalosis. So the initial limitation octa has been the limited fields like 3 into 3 mm or 12 into 12 mm, but now we have a wide angle octa which is able to helpful for us to detect the lesions in much more clearly. For example, this patient came with, this is a wide field fundus photography, which we do in a retinal clinics, and where the patient has having only a pre-retinal hemorrhage here. And when you did an octa, wide angle octa, you could see the new vessels very clearly and can determine the grade of the classification. And now let us look at the last investigation. When a patient comes with a medial haze, like for example, a known diabetic comes with a cataract. So this is where you see that there are a lot of crystalline kind of deposits, and one could think that it could be vitreous hemorrhage. So that is one differential. But here one need to clearly observe that you can see very clearly that along with the crystalline deposit, there is a equiescent space beneath. So this is actually a case of a asteroid hyalosis. and B scan will be extremely useful in documenting that there is a change. Similarly, in a case of vitreous hemorrhage, one can see that there will be a lot of there is no equiescent space beneath, and you can see the membranous echoes. But B scan is also extremely useful. What are the, not whether is it only vitreous hemorrhage, and as I said initially, only eye is like a garden, and vitreous will be a lot of tractional attachments. So is it only a hemorrhage which is there just behind the hyaloid in the vitreous, or is there a pull on the retina like a tractional detachment, or is it having a broad attachment? So it will tell us a prognostic. B scan also is an extremely useful prognostic factor, what we are going to expect after clearing the vitreous hemorrhage. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Padmaja, for the detailed presentations. I think you have covered a lot of aspects of pathogenesis, classification, even the findings which normally, we have to be aware of what is normal, what is abnormal. But the key points from this workshop, as Dr. Sabu had mentioned, if we can condense them into, let's say, two or three questions, I would like to ask you. One is on the referral, the other is on the diagnosis. You had shown one of the first photographs of the slide. There was a physician who had type 1 diabetes and had advanced proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Now we have tackled diabetic retinopathy from the awareness aspect. You spread awareness that diabetes can affect the eye. But even if someone has the awareness, it is not converted into practice many times. We have a very common example nowadays of coronavirus. You say mask and social distance, nobody follows. Awareness is there, but does not get converted into practice, as if nothing will happen to me. What are your thoughts on tackling awareness and practice gap?
So I think the most important diabetic retinopathy can be tackled only by an integrated approach. So the best model that can happen is only the physician-led model. I always believe that. So it has to be the fundus imaging should become the should become the integral part of the battery of investigations that can be done in a battery in the fundus clinic. Of course, the physician should be assisted by could be an assisted by an allied personnel like an optometrist or a technicians. They can actually assist in terms of managing the any related eye complication, but the best model will be the physician led model, where a fundus imaging should become the part and parcel. So when the, because he'll be the first contact of the diabetes. And when I said that 100 people, when we said 20% of them are diabetic retinopathy, and around 10% are macular edema or the sight-threatening retinopathy, ultimately it is all the systemic control. So the 90% of diabetic retinopathy is going to be managed by the systemic control. So I feel the physician office is the best place where we should start this approach.
Yeah,
And
thank you, Pamela. I would like to take the input of Dr. Sanjay here also. Coming back to that question, you also would be facing a lot of patients like this. You advise something, they understand, but they don't follow your advice. How do you deal with kind of a situation where one, you may have, patients, you are advising them to undergo some tests or advising some medicine, they will not take the medicine, they will not come back to your follow-up. How do you tackle such kind of behavior?
I think, Dr. Raja, the crux is counseling. We have to spend time counseling the patient. And most of the doctors don't tend to, they tend to overlook this very much. Maybe because of short of time, they don't have trained staff to be counselors. They themselves, with the pressure of work, are not able to spend enough time. But I think if you spend enough time counseling the patient on the problems of diabetes, I would expect that majority of the patients would tend to follow your advice. There would, of course, be fallouts on either side that you can't really account for. But you need good people who would sort of act as a counselors to guide them. As Dr. Padmaja just mentioned in her talk, and I was very keenly listening to her talk, that obviously retinal screening is a very important part of the physician's examination. Now, most of us are not trained to look at the retinas in that manner. I mean, we do have fundoscopes and stuff like that. A lot of us today have even fundus cameras in our clinic. We'll probably have technicians trained to take the photographs either. But interpretation becomes a very important part, which, we are not equipped to do it. Also, when we take fundus photographs, we tend to overlook the peripheries, the deep peripheries, and that doesn't get captured. And I believe that that is an important area too that you need to look at. So you may get the central retina that is very well captured, but the peripheries may be completely missed out, and you may still miss out a lesion. So I think we need to have the collaboration with the Vitreoretinal Society to see how can there be a centralized process where people can get their fundus photographs interpreted, or you train people to interpret fundus photographs for all those who have it, so that at least there is some meaning to that examination. Otherwise, it just becomes another list of examination in the doctor's clinic, and it goes into the file, the photograph, with no interpretation done. So there has to be a further follow-up, and I think that can only happen either we upload the photographs to a certain place and you help us, or you have to train us to see how do we interpret the fundus photographs, because examining the fundus is not everybody's task.
Yeah, I totally agree, Dr. Sanjay. You brought up very valid points, practical points. Yeah, one may have the expertise, knowledge, specialization. As doctors, we may be, having the latest technology, but how to make it cross-functional and scale it up to the millions of patients that require care is what needs to be tackled. So in that context, I think Dr. Rajiv Raman probably would be covering some aspects of definitely your questions. We'll come
Yes.
to him later on, but due to paucity of time, I think we need to move ahead. And